My cousin didn't even lower her voice when she said it. I was standing in the hallway half awake, the dim kitchen light spilling across the tile like a tired sigh, when I heard her laugh, soft, careless, dripping with the kind of confidence people only have when they think you're too naive to doubt them. The spoon clinked against her mug, that familiar ceramic scrape I'd grown up hearing during sleepovers and forced holiday mornings. She was talking to someone on speaker, the voice muffled, the tone sharp. "She won't make it tomorrow," she murmured. "Trust me. She'll be out cold." Something in the way she said out cold brushed over my skin like a cold fingertip. I didn't understand then. I was groggy, distracted, still half in the echo of the day before. The attorney's voicemail reminding us all to arrive early for the will reading. My family had been circling that event for months like vultures hovering close enough to smell the blood but not yet willing to land. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know. I remember the faint smell of charcoal drifting in from outside. Someone in the neighborhood must have been grilling late, the smoke sliding lazily beneath the doorframe. My chest felt tight, but I chalked it up to my allergies acting up again. I had no idea that the small orange bottle sitting on the counter, my bottle, no longer held what I believed it did. My name is Elena Hart. I'm 33 years old, and 3 months ago my cousin switched the label on my allergy medication to sleeping pills so I wouldn't make it to the inheritance meeting. That single decision nearly ended my life, and left my entire family exposed in ways none of them ever expected. When I picked up the bottle that night, sleep tugging heavy on my eyes, nothing felt unusual. The label looked the same, my name printed clearly in the pharmacist's narrow type. The pills rattled with their usual soft percussion. I swallowed 2 without thinking. I'd done it 100 times. But something felt not in my body, not yet. In the air. In the way my cousin glanced at me as she passed down the hallway, hands tucked casually in her sweater sleeves, humming, a low, tuneless thing, almost bored. Her dark hair fell over her shoulder like it always did, and yet, she wouldn't meet my eyes. There's a memory that always surfaces when I think about that moment. I was maybe 11. She and I were sitting under the weak porch light at my aunt's old house in Virginia. The wood steps smelled like rain, and she leaned toward me, whispering secrets about the adults. Who hated who was drowning in debt, who had lied about college. She liked knowing things. She liked having power tucked discreetly behind her smile. She also liked watching other people flinch. I think part of me always sensed she carried an edge sharper than she pretended. I just didn't think she'd ever aim it at me. The pills hit harder than I expected. Within 10 minutes, the room tilted like a ship shifting weight. The floor felt unsteady, distant. My heartbeat throbbed in my ears. Slow, then strangely fast, then slow again. The overhead light flickered softly, not actually dimming, but my eyes struggling to hold on to it. I remember reaching for the edge of the counter, my fingers barely grazing it. I remember the cold tile against my cheek. I remember thinking, this is not my allergy medicine. The next moment blurred into darkness. What I didn't know then, what still tightens something in my throat when I think about it, is that my cousin stood in the doorway for almost a full minute watching me fade. Not helping. Not panicking. Just watching. As if she were confirming something off a checklist. When I woke up, it wasn't to the familiar sound of my aunt fussing or the annoying beeping of my alarm. It was the sterile chill of the hospital, the faint scent of disinfectant burning the inside of my nose, and a fluorescent light humming above me like a trapped insect. My throat felt dry, my limbs heavy, my vision smeared at the edges. A doctor stood near my bed, flipping through a chart with the kind of quiet practiced when delivering news people don't want to hear. He looked relieved, though, when my eyes finally focused on him. "Miss Hart," he said gently. "You're lucky. Another hour, and you might not have woken up." Lucky? I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow, stretched thin like a thread pulled too tight. He asked questions. What did I take? How many? Did I intentionally overdose? But I kept shaking my head, insisting it was just allergy medication. His brows creased. He held up the bottle they'd found in my kitchen, sealed inside a clear evidence bag. "This isn't allergy medication," he said. And something in my world split quietly down the middle. When my aunt arrived, her perfume hit the air before she even entered the room. Vanilla and sandalwood, a scent that once felt comforting. She brought my cousin with her. My cousin's expression bordered on concerned, but her eyes were too calm, too steady. Like she'd practiced the face in the car mirror. "I can't believe this happened," she whispered, placing a hand on her chest. You scared us. As if she hadn't been the last person in that kitchen. As if she didn't know exactly why my heartbeat had slowed to a crawl. But I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because something old inside me was waking up. A part of me that remembered every time she'd humiliated me in front of relatives, every time she'd taken credit for something I'd done, every time she'd whispered into adults' ears about me when she wanted attention shifted her way. She'd been building a foundation of quiet cruelty for years. And now she'd nearly killed me for money. The will reading was hours away. I told the doctor I needed to attend. He hesitated, but eventually agreed after running tests and confirming my vitals were stabilizing. Don't exert yourself, he warned. And if you feel faint, sit immediately. I nodded. But the truth was, faint wasn't the thing I feared anymore. The truth was finally forming a shape. Quiet. Heavy. Unavoidable. And I knew, deep in the slow rhythm of my recovering pulse, that whatever waited in that attorney's office was only the beginning. The morning of the will reading felt colder than it should have. Cold in that thin, metallic way hospitals often imprint on your skin, like something you carry out with you into the world even after you're discharged. The sky outside looked washed out, the kind of gray that softens the edges of buildings and makes them feel farther away. My breath fogged slightly as I stepped out of the sliding doors, the doctor's parting words still lodged somewhere behind my ribs. My aunt offered to drive. I declined. Her car smelled like citrus and stale resentment. I wasn't ready to sit beside either. Instead, I called a rideshare and sat quietly in the back seat, my hands curled around the hospital discharge papers. The plastic bag containing the medication, my cousin's swapped bottle, lay zipped inside my purse, the evidence clicking softly against the side with every turn the driver made. A faint ache pulsed behind my eyes. The doctor said the sedative would linger for a while, that my body would feel heavier than usual. But beneath that heaviness, something sharper kept pushing upward. A kind of clarity I hadn't expected. A resolve that tasted like bitterness and cool steel. As we pulled up to the attorney's building, sunlight finally broke through the clouds, thin, fragile, pale. It stretched across the pavement in long brushstrokes that reminded me of childhood mornings at my grandfather's farm, when the dew clung to the grass and he'd tap his cane twice on the porch before stepping into the day. A memory rose quietly. Him sitting beside me on an overturned bucket, teaching me how to tie a proper knot. Don't pull too fast, he murmured. Gentle hands make stronger holds. Back then it sounded like boring advice. Now it felt like a metaphor he hadn't realized he was giving me. The lobby was warm and smelled faintly of old envelopes and legal paper. Dry, dusty, oddly comforting. People's voices echoed down the hall, low and clipped, like they were trying not to disturb the walls themselves. My family was already gathered in the waiting room when I entered. Every head turned. Some with mild surprise. Some with annoyance. One with something close to fear. My cousin stood near the window, her arms folded loosely, her posture practiced but brittle. Her eyes flicked quickly to my face, then to my purse, then back to my face. I didn't smile. I didn't look away. My aunt approached me with a soft sigh. Elena, sweetheart. You should be resting. We didn't think, well, we weren't sure you'd make it. I did, I said simply. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, but steadiness was enough. She hesitated, smoothing her blouse as if ironing out guilt with her palms. My family has always been good at rearranging discomfort into politeness, like sweeping dirt under a rug and calling the floor clean. The attorney called us in. The room felt smaller than the hallway, lined with law books and file cabinets that hummed with fluorescent light. A faint scent, something like pine cleaner, hovered in the air. I sat near the back, letting the chairs along the wall support my still weary legs. My cousin sat 2 seats in front of me. She never once turned around. The will reading began quietly, the attorney shuffling through papers, his voice steady and neutral. Items were distributed. Stories were told. Tension rose in small, imperceptible shifts, like the tightening of a string instrument being tuned too quickly. Then he reached the final portion. Beneficiary assignments. My grandfather had always been a man of particular logic. He believed in rewarding character, not proximity. That terrified some people in the family more than they ever admitted. When the attorney announced the first major asset, my grandfather's investment property, I watched several heads tilt forward. My cousin's shoulders straightened, a premature smile creeping along the corner of her mouth. It wasn't her name. It wasn't mine either. It went to my uncle, who sat quietly in the corner, his hands folded like he'd been expecting nothing and was preparing for even less. The second asset, my grandfather's cabin, went to me. A slow breath slipped out of me. Not victory. Not surprise. Something gentler. A confirmation of a bond that had always existed between us, even when geography and silence made it easy to forget. My cousin's neck stiffened. And then, the moment that branded itself into every nervous system in that room, the attorney paused. His fingers hovered above the final envelope. He looked up. "There is an addendum," he said. "Filed 3 months ago." My cousin's hands clenched. Before he could continue, a knock sounded at the door. Not aggressive. Not hesitant. Just firm enough to reset the temperature of the entire room. A police officer stepped inside. The scrape of his shoes against the carpet felt louder than it should have. My breath held itself. Eyes darted from relative to relative, a silent guessing game no one wanted to participate in. "Sorry to interrupt," the officer said, nodding toward the attorney. "But we were instructed to notify the appropriate family member immediately. We're looking for someone named Elise." Every head turned toward me. My cousin's complexion drained of color, slowly, like ink leaking out of a watercolor painting. The officer continued. "There was evidence collected this morning indicating intentional tampering of medication belonging to Miss Hart. We have reason to believe a member of this household may have been involved." My aunt gasped, one hand covering her mouth. My cousin didn't speak. Not at first. She just stared at the table's polished surface as if it held a map out of this moment. I remembered suddenly a small detail from childhood, how she used to pluck the wings off ladybugs when no one was watching, insisting to me, "It doesn't hurt them. They don't feel things like we do." I believed her because I wanted to, because she smiled when she said it. Now I wondered if that smile had always been a warning. When the officer asked to speak with her outside, her steps were unsteady. The hallway swallowed their voices, leaving behind a thick, unmoving silence. The will reading never truly resumed. People shifted in their seats, whispered, avoided my eyes. The attorney tried to maintain composure but eventually closed the folder, sensing the story had spilled beyond legal papers. After a few minutes, my uncle, quiet, steady, thoughtful, sat beside me. "You deserved honesty a long time ago," he said softly. "I'm sorry we let things get this far." His voice carried a gentleness I hadn't realized I needed. "If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe." When I stepped outside, the air felt clearer, brighter, as if the sky itself had made space for something new. My legs still trembled from the sedative, but my spirit felt steadier than it had in years. Later that week, after statements, questions, and the slow unwinding of truths everyone had ignored, I visited my grandfather's cabin. The porch light, still weak, still flickering, greeted me the way it used to when I was small. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the smell of pine, listening to the dry leaves scraping softly across the steps. Somewhere inside me, the knot I'd carried for years finally loosened. My life wasn't perfect now, but it was mine again. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. Some truths arrive quietly, shining,